So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fabian Meneses. I'm one of the assistant directors for the Transfer Opportunity Program, and we are the host of tonight's webinar. So the top program is one of the hosts of this particular webinar, so I'll go over some of those resources in a bit. But today I'm joined by my colleague Nancy Aldarete and our amazing student outreach ambassadors, Amy and Lydia. So they will be answering your questions using the Q&A feature on our in the webinar. And then the chat will be used for me to drop some of the links that we're going to be sharing with you. So again, all questions will go in the Q&A, and then the chat will be used to add links. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's a quick overview of the agenda of what we're going to discuss today. So the first that we're going to talk about is like, why even choose to go to college, right? Then we'll talk about really just the difference of transfer options for you. And if you're a high school senior or let's say junior right now thinking about the transfer route, or maybe currently a community college student that is planning to transfer, or maybe you're a parent or a counselor or professional staff who's really just guiding students throughout the transfer process, the content is really designed for you, okay? So we'll go over the cost of attendance and really just teach you how to read some of these offers. And then we'll go over, and I'll provide you really just a map to understanding college and go over the steps that you need to earn a degree. And then lastly, I'll explore ways that you could identify and really utilize the resources and the tools that you have that play really critical roles in your transfer success, not only here at Davis, but also the institutions that you're going to be attending. And I really don't believe in like gatekeeping this information, so I'm so glad that you all joined us today. So we'll go ahead and get started. So let's first talk about why. Like, why even go to college? And I think that's such a loaded question sometimes to answer. But the key thing to keep in mind is to maybe ask yourself some of these questions. So for some of us, um, why going to college is really just a subjective question, and it really depends on who is asking, right? So my reason might be very different than your colleagues or your friends or your parents. And it definitely may be different than another student. But here's some of the most popular reasons of why people go to college. So the first one really is like people go to college to explore or expand their potential earnings, right? So to make more money or explore different career options, let's say discover really their passion, maybe explore their own identity or potential identities, and really also to gain some practical life skills. For some of us, it's really to meet new people from all around the world. And for some of us, the priority is really just to have the experience to travel, to study abroad, to see the world, to learn from different scholars in that particular area or field. And I think the biggest thing that I've heard my high school students tell me, and most of my community college students, and really myself, is really to gain an independence. So the financial responsibility to live on your own, to do your own thing, right? So are there any of the reasons that you see here, or feel free to add some of those reasons in the chat? And I'd be curious to read some of those out loud. So I'll let you answer in the chat. But regardless of what drives you to attend college, it's super important to really understand and know your why. So knowing your why simply means understanding why you are doing something before you do it. Your why will really serve as your guiding principle, right? Or principles, right? So now that you, now if everyone ever tells you that you're going to college, is going to be an easy task, it is not. But knowing your why will really just keep you motivated during the times of self-doubt and really just frustration. So I really encourage you all to really take like 5 minutes after this workshop to really write down your answer either in a piece of paper or the notes app or whatever format fits best, and really just tape that piece of paper somewhere that you could see it and just remind yourself why you're going to college. For me personally, the reason that I chose to go to college was because I know that my career required more education. So if I wanted to work in higher education, specifically as an advisor or a high school counselor, I know that I needed a master's degree. So knowing that information ahead of time really helped guide the decisions that I made in my career, but also the area of interest for my major. Okay. So let's move on. Before I really go into a little bit more detail, I want to distinguish the applicants that I'm talking about. So um, I like to really just share some of the terms that you will come across throughout your educational journey. So many students apply as a freshman, or some of them apply as a transfer student, or even graduate applicants, right? So it's super important to figure out your eligibility as soon as possible. So if you're planning to apply for an undergraduate degree, you can apply for either as a freshman or a transfer applicant. And a freshman applicant are folks that are currently in high school or have graduated from high school but did not enroll in a regular session at a college or university. A transfer student or an applicant is one, on the other hand, that has already enrolled at a regular session at a college or university after they have graduated from high schools. So students can apply, let's say, a sophomore level or junior level or even senior level standing to a university. But again, when you meet with a community college advisor, ask them what standing you will be as a transfer so that you're ready to apply for admissions and you know exactly what to put in your application. So again, depending on the school system, some schools are in the semester system, some of them are in the quarter system. Regular session for semester school falls under, or I'm sorry, regular session are fall and spring, while regular sessions for a quarter is fall, winter, and spring. So summer session is not considered a regular session. It's really just a special session. Okay. So just wanted to clarify that we're going to be focusing on transfer applicants. So let's go over some of the transfer options for you. So as a transfer student, you have many options, but you may need to figure out what your plan is from really just right now, the start. You need to choose where you want to transfer to and really create a plan to make sure that you meet the transfer requirements when you're ready to apply. So, okay, let's look at this. You have four really just big options on the screen here. So from left to right, we have the CSU system, which has about 23 campuses all over California. The next option is the UC system, which also is spread out throughout California. We have about 10 campuses, and 9 of those are considered undergraduate institutions, while one of them is a graduate institution, and that's the University of San Francisco, which only offers graduate and professional education. Additionally, there are private universities and colleges all around California, and you could think of some, I'm sure you've heard of Stanford or University of Southern California, USC, or locally here by Davis is University of the Pacific, University of San Francisco, Santa Clara, or even my alma mater, which is Loyola Marymount, and so many more, right? So there's also out-of-state schools. So you can apply, for example, for students to transfer out to a different state. One of the programs that I could think of is the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, where you work with the folks from the out-of-state institution to try to aim to transfer to that institution. And lastly, there's also the historical Black colleges and universities. So the HBCU system is another great option for students. Although these schools are considered historically Black colleges and universities, they do accept all ethnicities. And there's about 101 HBCUs across the United States. And I understand that it could be very overwhelming to have so many options to choose from, but we really encourage you to reach out to the counselor and specifically your transfer center at your community college, and they could help you really just navigate through the various options you see here and help you prepare to be eligible to apply to those different universities. So whether or not you already know which schools you want to apply to, we really encourage you to do this exercise because there's so many transfer options. Figuring out which one really fits you and really fits your needs requires some assessment. So there are many factors that you need to consider. So for today, we'll focus on about 5 factors. So let me go ahead and get through those. So the first one is academic. It sounds pretty evident, but just to clarify is, does this institution serve your academic needs as a learner? Does it have your major, right? Does it have the opportunities that you need to be successful? The second is social. So do they have access to the community that you identify with? What is the surrounding situation look like? What are the clubs, organizations, that are offered at that particular institution? Environmental could mean a little bit of both. So for one, do you feel comfortable or secure on that campus? Do you even like the weather, right, at that institution? How far is it from home? What is the closest airport, public transportation line? So all of these pieces are super important to help answer those questions. And next, and most importantly, I think with students is, can you afford to go here, right? What are the different ways to pay for college? And also, what is some of the opportunities for scholarships or grants that you have to when applying to that particular institution? Another super important option for students is to determine what graduate programs can they afford, or I'm sorry, are offered, and also what classes will they need to take to prepare for that particular graduate school program, and also what notable alumni attend. What is the alumni network? What are the job opportunities that are exposed to you based on the industry partners that work with that particular institution? So for this exercise, I really challenge you to put the fit factors in order of importance. And for some students, financial factors is the most important, while others, maybe the academic is the most important. So as you learn more about the universities that you're interested in, you could plug in your answers to each of these categories and really just help start to like redefine your intentionality and reflecting back on the why, right? So let me quickly go over some options for you. So with the fit factors in mind, here are 9 of our amazing campuses that offer you the culture and academic excellence. So regardless of the UC that you attend, you're going to get high quality education. But again, with the fit factors in mind, I encourage you to consider asking yourself which UC appeals to you and how close or far is it from home? And again, what is the most important in which the UC offers in your area of study? So we'll drop a couple links in the chat in a bit, but here's an overview of your options. Now, I want to focus quickly on the community college system itself, just because it's so large. So as the largest and most diverse system in higher education in the country, the California Community College system is really uniquely positioned to help students from all backgrounds really just improve their social and economic mobility and build a better future for themselves and their families. So there's 116 community colleges that serve more than 2 million students annually and transfer about 80,000 each year to University of California and also to the Cal State systems, while providing hundreds and thousands more with more skill-based jobs or career education needed to really structure a good paying job. So the key thing to keep in mind is that there's probably a community college close to you, or if not, it might be virtually close to you. So I want to pivot my attention over to highlighting some of the resources that you could tap into while you're at the community college. So as a community college student, the system provides you help to facilitate the many programs that you see here on the slide. So depending on where you see yourself at, you might want to capitalize on these programs. And these programs are really just designed to expedite the transfer process. So for example, if you're interested in a CSU campus or campuses, you can take advantage of the educational pathway like the Associate's Degree of Transfer which is the ADT, and use the CSU General Education Pattern Certificate. And for those students who are interested in both the CSU and the UC campuses, you might want to consider following IGETC, which starting fall of 2025 is going to be changed over to CalGETC, so the CalGETC pattern. So each of your community college partners, or I'm sorry, campuses have the CalGETC sheet or IGETC sheet, really that spells out all of the classes that you need to take. And you could also download the sheet and really just plan accordingly. Transfer students may have program options when it comes to the UC campus. So for example, UC Pathways serve as a roadmap to majors, about 20 majors that participate in that program. So for UCLA specifically, there's the UCLA Transfer Alliance program, which is called TAP. And their students are certified after completing the honors and scholarship or scholars program at that community college and are given priority consideration for admissions to UCLA. The other option here is the Transfer Admissions Guarantee. So TAG is the only admissions guarantee in the UC system. So there's about 6 out of the 9 UC campuses that participate in TAG. UCLA, Berkeley, and San Diego do not accept TAG. Another great option here is the HBCU transfer programs, which have also a guaranteed admissions, which about 37 of them out of the 101 campuses participate in a guaranteed admissions with and when the minimum requirements are met. So you might notice that we didn't include the private universities or out-of-state options here. And the reason being is just that there's so many and each of them have their own admissions criteria. So in the interest, if you're interested in those particular institutions, then please work with your community college counselor and the reps from those particular universities. Students who begin at a California community college in fall of 2025 or later and are planning for admissions to a university by transfer can fulfill what we call their lower division breadth in general education, which is GE's general education requirements, by completing the CalGETC or by fulfilling the specific requirements of the college or school that in which you want to apply. We'll be adding a chat. We'll be adding a link to the chat to go over the CalGETC pathway. Now, if you attended California Community College, you have the opportunity to work on your general education. This coursework is that all of this coursework is students need to complete it. So to put it more simply, it's like taking high school courses all over again, but with less people, and really you get to choose the subjects that you want to learn, the time that works best for you, the format, whether it's online, hybrid, or in person. The second set of courses that you would focus on would be coursework that prepare you for your area of study, so your major. So major prep can also be a part of your general education courses. So for example, in order to transfer, all of us need a math. What type of math? Well, if you're a STEM major, you should really start pivoting your focus towards calculus, but one calc class may be also a course that is counted for your general education requirement of math. So again, a combination of your general education plus your major prep will prepare you to transfer. General education, or GEs, and major prep are all considered lower division courses. Thus, once you are prepared to transfer, you would head over to the college or university and really work on your upper division classes. So upper division is coursework that is specific to your area of study. And upper division can be taken at the university level. And again, there's a minimum amount of units that you need in order to graduate from that university with a degree in that particular area of study. I know that I'm throwing a whole bunch of lingo at you, but higher education itself comes with a lot of new terminology, and I'll go over those in a little bit. Here's a preview of some of the minimum requirements for transfer. Now, my colleague Nancy will go over those in a little bit, but as a disclaimer here, we did not include the private schools or out-of-state universities or the HBCU admission criteria, again, because each of them have different admissions requirements. And so if you're interested again in those campuses, and we really recommend that you check in with the folks from those universities and specifically talk to the transfer center at your community college if to connect with the folks from those schools. Now, when we put the CSU and the UC's criteria side by side, they're pretty similar requirements between the two. So as a transfer applicant, figuring out your major at each university that you're interested in is really the most important step. So really watch out for the terminology like impacted, selective, capped majors. So for example, here at UC Davis, if your major is considered selective, that just means that your area of study has additional courses or a specific GPA on top of the minimum that you need to have. And Nancy will review that in a little bit. But regardless, if you are applying to both the UC or the CSU, you must have at least 60 transferable semester credits or 90 quarter, right? A tip for you is to take classes that qualify for both systems to really determine transferability. You can use a platform called assist.org or go to the course description when you're registering for the class, and it will know after the title whether it's CSU transferable only or UC or actually both. Again, work with your community college counselor. Next, we're going to look over the GPA. So for the CSU system, the minimum GPA to apply is a 2.0. While the UC system requires a minimum of a 2.4, but UC Davis specifically requires a 2.8 for most majors and a 3.1 for folks that are applying for the engineering or computer science majors. So for the CSU system, admission evaluators will look for the golden 4. So that just means, did you have these 4 requirements? So they are asking folks to complete oral communication, 2 English courses, and then 1 math. For the UC system, we call that, we require what we call the 7 course pattern. So again, still 2 English classes, 1 math, as well as 4 courses in 2 different areas like physical, biological sciences, arts, humanities, or even the social behavioral sciences. And again, you would work with your community college counselor who will also be reviewing a website called assist.org to determine what coursework is considered UC transferable. The one thing I want to note, that the minimum GPA is enough for us to review your application. So make sure that you're always pushing for the highest GPA possible, the highest grades possible, so that you're among the selected students who are extended in admissions offer. Okay. So with that being said, I'll pass it over to my colleague Nancy to share a little bit more. Nancy.
Hi, thank you, Fabian, for that really robust introduction of all things related to transferring. My name is Nancy Alderete, and I am the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions for our Chicanx Latinx students throughout California. And it is my pleasure to go over some of the steps, admission requirements, as well as the cost of attendance. So a lot to consider here. So next slide, please. I know Fabian went into detail right now regarding the additional requirements, but this is really important if your goal ultimately is to transfer to a UC school. So we would like for you to have and complete your 60 transferable units by the end of the spring before you transfer. So I know one of the questions we got in the Q&A section earlier was very specific to this. So that is the expectation. There are some students on occasion that will take summer courses, but that it will be to not meet the requirements. It could be to fulfill IGETC. Some students may know what IGETC stands for and what that process is, but for UC Davis, it is not part of the admissions requirement. So some students will take a class or two in the summer to finish up IGETC, but we are going to ask that you have your 60 transferable units you see there. If you are, as Fabian said, if you want to be a competitive applicant for UC, you want to reach for a higher than a 2.4. We'll go into some of our tags and other things, but generally I like to tell students, 2.8 is the minimum GPA for most of our majors. So the higher you have, the better. And then just to reiterate, that 7-course pattern, again, is really important. My piece of advice to you students is to really get on that English, your transferable English and your transferable math before the spring before you transfer, because that will allow us to look at your file and really be able to make a decision and determination before the spring. If you're applying for TAG, you'll also see that there are some embedded additional requirements. Next slide, please. So Fabian also mentioned the selective requirements or selective majors, excuse me, that are going to require additional criteria and preparation. So here, for example, biology is a selective major across the system. So there will be additional courses that you have to take and a specific GPA. Other terminology that you'll hear, high demand, CAP, screening, majors across the system will also mean the same thing. So on the next slide, you'll be able to see what UC Davis considers a selective major. So I know there's a lot, but what's easier for me to, when I'm working with students and for them to have a clear understanding. If you are in the College of Biological Sciences or Engineering, there is a lot of preparation that you have to do. And so automatically any major that falls within that college will be selective. In addition to that, you can see here, our business major is also selective starting fall 2027 for our applicants. And within the College of Agriculture and Environmental Science, new this year, and for those animal biology and animal science students, sometimes it's a surprise that those are not selective, but starting 2027, they will be. You can also see a few others listed there. If you would like to take a screenshot, you're more than welcome to. And then on the right side of the screen, under the College of Letters and Science, you can see all the different majors that fall within the selective status. So applied mathematics through psychology and statistics. I would also like to encourage you, as Fabian said, to look at assist.org to be familiar with all the requirements that are expected for you to have before you transfer. Now, if you have a few campuses in mind, it's great to print out. I'm a visual person. I like to see things in front of me. So if I'm considering UC San Diego and UC Davis and UC Santa Barbara, I'm going to print out each of those agreements so that I can compare which classes are going to satisfy all the requirements. And then you'll notice that some campuses may ask you to take an additional course that another one of our sister campuses will not. So that is why counseling is really important. Talking to your transfer representatives is really important. And then, of course, if you have access to a top program at your respective campus, that's going to be really important to meet with one of our representatives. Next slide, please. So I know that the cost of attendance is a huge factor for many of our students that are trying to understand how are we going to pay for school. I know that when I was applying to college, my mom was really excited, but coming from a single parent household, this was going to be a whole new burden, to be honest. So I definitely took advantage of a lot of the programs that we're going to share with you, and that is how I was able to pay for school. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the average cost of attendance. So you can see here, at the California State University, tuition is a little less than $7,000. The UC system is a little less than $15,000, and our HBCU system is also comparable to the CSU in terms of tuition pricing at a little more than $7,000. Private universities and out-of-state are going to vary a lot. And so I want you to just look at this estimate and know that this covers tuition. So if you are thinking about, well, what about the rest of the expenses that are a part of going to college, you'll see those on the next slide. So if you concentrate on the top light blue banner that goes across the screen, you'll see that living on campus, the system tuition and fees is going to be standard across the board, no matter if you're living on campus or if you're living at home. The campus fees based are also standard. So no matter what, where you're living, those prices are fixed. What is going to vary the most, if you look at room and board and you look across that line there, you'll see that the most expensive is living on campus in a studio apartment, right? So that's about $29,763 if you're looking at that screenshot. And then obviously the least expensive option is going to be living at home. So you have a wide range of what it will cost, what your estimated cost of attendance will be, depending on your room and board situation. Not to mention a few of those other expenses that you see there. Transportation, some of you may be commuting to campus, some of you may not bring a car and will only go home for major breaks. And so that will determine your transportation cost. Health insurance, we do require all students to have health insurance. So if you're not coming in with your own health insurance or covered under your family's or your parents' health insurance, then the university is committed to providing that and also helping you find financial assistance to pay for that if your student aid index falls within a certain range. So that is just an example of what the UC Davis undergraduate experience is like. And it is pretty similar across the UC system. When you're thinking about the CSU or the private, that's going to vary quite a bit. Next slide, please. So something that the University of California came up with to really help our students be able to predict and plan for the undergraduate experience is to have a stability plan. So when you come in, if you started in, for example, last year, your tuition is going to be fixed for 6 years of that price of $14,436. So that way, you know that that tuition is not going to change while you are an undergraduate student. So this is a very helpful tool to help our students and our families plan and know that that is a set price while you are studying. We also have a similar plan for our UC Native American community, and that also helps students make college more affordable and accessible for our California Native American students, undergraduate student. So the initial plan will ensure that in-state system-wide tuition and student services fees are fully covered for our California residents who are members of federally recognized Native American, American Indian, and Alaska Native tribes. The plan also applies to new and continuing undergraduate, graduate students, professional students in a state-funded degree program who don't already qualify for financial aid. Now, next slide. I hope that you have given some thought to how you will pay for college. Many community college students that I work with have done really well in high school and will opt to go to a community college because it is such a savings when you're thinking about the expense and for other personal reasons as well. So while you're at your community college, it is really important to think about how you're going to pay, but also if your plans are if your parents are going to help you pay and assist, what that will look like. So here you'll see a few different options that students use to help them subsidize their education. Of course, working is very practical. I highly recommend that you start saving some money to help you pay for your expenses, not only now, but also save for when you transfer to your institution. The more of a little savings egg that you have, then the easier it'll be for you and a little less stressful while you're continuing your undergraduate education. You can also use a college savings plan. There are various options. One that I know is very common and very familiar for students that have a higher expected family contribution are the 529 plans. So if your parents have those, then obviously, or your family has extended that for you or saved up, you're able to use those funds to help you pay for your tuition, your fees, and a few other expenses related to your college experience. When you submit your financial aid application or your California Dream Act application, you will also be considered for grants, work study, and loans. And within that, you'll be able to see how much they're offering you. A lot of these are need-based, and in reference to the information that you provide on your financial aid application or your Dream application. The way I like to explain to students is if your family makes a lot of money, there's less aid available for you. If your family doesn't make a lot of money, then there's going to be an increase as far as free money or aid, like grants and work study and loans that is available to you. So that is depending on your student aid index and how much your family makes and how many people that income supports. And then lastly, scholarships. You can apply for scholarships, and there's a wide range and a wide array in your community, at your community college, outside. When you apply to UC, you're also submitting a scholarship application. So you will see a section that breaks down, a lot of different criteria. And so you will indicate which scholarships you think you qualify for. So that way, if you do, it'll show up on your awards letter and you'll be able to use that to help you pay for your school. Next slide, please. So in terms of resources, we're going to explore what you already may have available at your college and also really encourage you to take advantage of those resources. I can't emphasize enough to students that we work with that this is your journey as well. Some of us, we've been accustomed for many years having our counselors tell us what to do, our parents tell us what to do, right, when we're in high school and what have you. And when you get to the community college, it's kind of like a cold shower for some students because there's sometimes an abundance of resources and you don't know where to start. So hopefully being aware of what is available at your respective college can help you in this process. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, some of the resources that are available at many of our community colleges include MESA, CalPromise, Puente, Veteran Service, DSPS, Health and Mental, Health Science, Umoja, EOPS, TRIO. And these are for all of the students that each program, may have a certain set of requirements, but there are so many support services available to our students. I can't tell you time and time and again when I'm visiting my community colleges and working with students, and I'll ask, hey, have you heard about the Puente program, which is a phenomenal program? Many times they're like, no, where do I get that information? Or some of our TRIO programs or EOPS. And so it's going to be really important for you to visit your transfer center to get information, to visit your guidance counselor to also receive information, and sometimes just stop and look at your Canvas, right? And look at your portal in a little more detail so that you can inquire about these wonderful resources that can definitely help you along your transfer journey. The other wonderful and amazing resource, of course, next slide, please, is your transfer center. So this is a very critical place. This is where you're going to get the help, the resources that you need to transfer, right? We have, as Fabian mentioned, millions of students that access community colleges throughout our state, and they go for various reasons. There's some students that want to transfer in 2 years, in 3 years, and so it's going to be really important and imperative to get the proper information. And this is why we are sharing so much of that with you today, is so that you can take ownership of what that journey and what that means for you, right? Be aware of the terms, the terminology, the requirements, the expectations. And I know it's overwhelming. And so that is where the transfer center will come in, and also be able to help you look at your different options and how to plan out for those various options. There's also application assistance. If you want to apply to the CSUs, if you want to apply to the UCs, if you have a couple privates, you'll know, and it can be actually confusing and overwhelming, where one system will want you to have a certain series of math or physics, and the rest of us will have you take a different series or sequence. So those are some of the conversations you want to have earlier so that you know what to take in advance. And if you want to transfer in a timely manner, whatever that means for you, that you have the right information to do that. It's always heartbreaking for me to work with students that received information and took the advice of perhaps a well-intentioned but maybe misinformed person at the community college that didn't share the proper information. And I know that it wasn't intentional, but when you look at all the information, it's easy sometimes to kind of just um, share answers that sometimes are errors or are erroneous. So that is why I task you, each and every one of you, to take ownership of your process of this transfer process. A couple of other things, of course, your transfer center is going to do is going to put on college fairs, college tours. Take advantage. Oftentimes it's a very low cost or sometimes even free options for you to visit different schools so that you can see what is available and what you like, what you dislike at the respective campuses. And then, of course, last but not least, we have admission representatives at most, if not more than 100 of the community colleges. We have top representatives, and we have a lot of different ways for you to connect with us directly. So please visit your transfer center for more information. Next slide, please. So we mentioned assist various times. This is going to be critical for all students that are considering transferring to a public institution like a UC or a CSU. It's also going to break down information regarding your general education as well as your major requirements. So that is really helpful. And I know sometimes there's asterisks and there's little pieces of information on there that are hard to decipher or filter through. But this, again, is where your transfer center comes in and can really be helpful and handy for you. We also have the TAP, and we're going to go into a few snapshots of what that looks like so we can go into detail for what the UC TAP planner will do for you. And then, of course, we mentioned the transfer center, but in addition to that, transfer preparations programs like our own UC Davis Transfer Opportunity Program provides a lot of assistance and advising based on your TAP application and evaluation, and then we'll also help you prepare so that it's a seamless transition. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of what the TAP website looks like. If you don't have an account, I highly encourage you to do this as soon as possible. And I know that we will drop this link into the chat. But this is a very basic step that will allow you access to all these things that we talked about and will help you organize your education plan as well. So if you already have a UC TAP, you can log in with your user ID and password at any time to make changes and updates. Next slide, please. So just a little insight into what the UC TAP is. It is a transfer admission planner. It is a free online tool to help you track your plan and your coursework. It was designed for California community college students. However, even if you're not a California community college student, you're still able to use it. And if you are coming in from outside of California, you will just have to manually enter all of your coursework. So if you are planning, this is really important, to apply for a transfer admission guarantee, you must have a TAP, as it's the only way where a tag can be submitted. So you cannot submit a tag without creating a UC TAP. We also recommend that you meet with a community college counselor first to upload your education transfer plan to your TAP. And that way you can enter your coursework, and it can be a lot easier when you're applying to the university. So this is, again, a really helpful tool, and it is required and needed for a tag for you to submit your tag. And if you have any questions about that, we will have some opportunity at the end of this webinar to discuss those. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more about our TAP. You will receive a lot of communication about upcoming events, visits from our UC representatives and our community college counselors. This is really easy to transfer your TAP account information directly into your UC application. And it also is just a central place for us to be able to record keep students that have attended multiple community colleges. Especially now, post-COVID area, we have students that take, courses at 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different community colleges. So this is a really great way to help us keep your information organized, but then also help us evaluate your application in the month of October and November. And the final slide regarding UC TAP, of course, this is just an example of your homepage. On there, you'll be able to see your tag status, any community college announcements, tips for how to use the tab, additional tag and transfer information, and also important dates and deadlines for tag and UC. A lot of times students will ask, I submitted a tag, do I still have to submit a UC application? And the answer to that is yes, you do. It is nice to know ahead of time that your tag is honored and has been accepted. And that means that if you fulfill those conditions of your tag, that we will hold a space for you at UC Davis, but it is an agreement. And so we need your full official application to sync both. And then of course, notify you officially in the spring as to your admission status. So I think that's a lovely benefit and perk, is not knowing whether or not you're going to get in. If you follow your tag and you have the GPA of a 3.2 in most cases, if it's not engineering, and you follow everything there, then you will have your guaranteed admission to 6 of the 9 UCs. And again, each one will have a different stipulation. For UC Davis, that 3.2 is golden for everything outside of engineering. And then there are a few exceptions where we don't accept a tag major. And the last slide that I want to just highlight here is, of course, don't skip over the About Me section, which will include personal information, demographic, and support programs. So there's some fields that are not required, but we highly encourage you to fill out the About Me section so that we can know more about you and who you are. And then it's also important for programs like ours to be able to reach out to you for various events. So as you're going through your TAP application, please make sure to save your work. And thank you so much. Next slide, please. And now I'll hand it over to Fabian.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for reiterating and reminding the students to save their work, but also to reach out often and frequently. Okay. So I want to quickly just go over what the Transfer Opportunity Program is. So you've heard the term TOP multiple times. So TOP is a transfer prep program, and we really help students from our specialized or 42 community colleges up and down the state. So the biggest thing that you walk away with is access to us so that we could schedule one-on-one appointments. The other thing, that the benefit that you get from being a top scholar is access to our monthly newsletter. You will get invited to certain events, and then all students really have access to our YouTube channel, and we'll be adding some of those links in the chat. Another key thing to keep in mind is that for TOP, we have 3 really big events. So the first one is our Discover UC Davis, which tends to be in early spring, so late February, maybe March. And we really invite all of our 42 partnering community colleges to get a tour of the campus, visit different campus partners. It's basically like a big open house for everyone. Another event that we're about to kick off next month is our Aggie to Be. So this is a summer program when we invite 50 students that have graduated from high school and then plan to attend one of our partnering community colleges. And we invite them for 3 days and 2 nights. We will pay for everything. You'll be able to live in a dorm. We will feed you 3 times a day. You'll be assigned one of our amazing student outreach ambassadors, and you'll really just start to build your cohort early. And we'll have the important conversations in July so that when you roll up to your community college in the fall, you're pretty much prepared. You already know what you need to do. Similar program is our Aggie Transfer Scholars Weekend. So ATSW is hosted in August, and it's also a 4-day and 3-night event. Where this particular pool of students is about 100 that we choose, and they will spend the weekend with us planning to transfer. So we'll work together on their personal insight questions. We'll work together to make sure that their educational plan it aligns not only with TAG, but also UC admissions. We will go over some resources they could tap into. One of my favorite things is seeing the students that go through our summer programs come back and actually work as student outreach ambassadors once they fulfill 1 quarter with us. So the majority of our student workers were part of our summer programs and were students that we used to work with at the community college prior to transfer. So one of my favorite things is to see that full circle moment. So you're probably just wondering, like, how can I be a top scholar or be part of the top program? So if you attend any of our 42 partnering community colleges, then you already are a top scholar. So you don't have to fill any application out. As long as you're attending one of these institutions, then you are, we could work together to make sure that you're eligible to apply. If you're not part of these particular community colleges, then there's an assigned person for your particular institution, and we'll be dropping the Find My Advisor link in the chat in a bit. Again, we'll be dropping the link in the chat, but for those of you on your phone or have your phone handy, you could always scan the QR code and then it'll send you over to the top page. So you could look at the different services that we offer, the partnering community colleges, and all the links that we've been dropping in the chat as well. So in the interest of time, I want to focus on a couple key takeaways. There's a lot of new vocabulary that you're going to learn in higher education, on top of studying a whole bunch of new subjects, dealing with a whole bunch of new people. So I want to just highlight a few that we went over. So GE's general education, TAP is the planner that we would need to figure out your eligibility. TAG is the application to guarantee your admissions. I'll throw one in here. TOP is the program that you work with, okay? And then, as Nancy reminded us, selective capped or screening majors require more work or specific requirements to be completed by. And this is like probably the 47,000th time we've said it. Assist.org is the official course transfer articulation system that we use between community colleges and CSUs and UCs and some private schools. So if the course exists in there, then we could determine its transferability. And then part of Assist is understanding that each major will have an articulation agreement, which is this class equals this class from this institution and that institution, okay? Another key thing to keep in mind is important dates. So if you miss any of these dates, there's very limited options that we could do. So the biggest piece of advice is making note of when these things are due and doing them beforehand, and then keeping an eye out for any communications that go out from the institutions that you're applying to or interested in applying to, right? So for those of you there that are going to be applying for the fall 2026 cycle, we're going to open the UC application starting August 1st. That means we're opening it, which means you could chip away at these different sections with the key thing in mind to submit your application sometime between October 1st and November 30th. For those of you that are doing a TAG application, you will do that in the month of September, okay? So the last thing I want to remind you all to really start defining your why, like why go to college? Next, to start researching and organizing all of the information that you're gathering. Part of that research and organization is to be familiar with the admissions requirements on top of the timeline that you need to do certain things by. And then most importantly is also understanding like how you're going to pay for your education. My piece of advice for you all is do not wait to apply for scholarships until you are admitted. Ensure that you're applying frequently and often, and always apply for the smaller chunks of money. So the $100, the $500, because everyone's going to want the $15,000 scholarship, which means it's probably going to be triple the amount of applications. But do those smaller amounts and then definitely apply often. And then the biggest piece is tapping into your resources. So we've stressed assist.org, we've stressed the transfer center, we stressed TOP if you're part of our partnering community colleges, we've stressed talking to the representatives of the institutions that you're interested in. Okay. So with that being said, we have about a couple minutes. I'll answer some of the questions live. But in the meantime, let me skip ahead real quick. I want to leave this in the background while I answer some of your questions. So Javi asked, when reviewing transfer applicants, does UC only consider college academic performance, or do they look at extracurricular activities, high school GPA, and other factors? So each UC has the exact same criteria, but we all use different parts of it. So for example, for Davis, personal insight questions are not, or extracurricular activities are not a huge factor for determining for admissions. What is really your academic rigor. And then the second layer to that is your GPA, right? So what is your major? What is your GPA? So really prioritizing your academic performance over the extracurricular activities or even your high school GPA. We're not even going to look at your high school GPA for transfer admissions. Great question, though. Another question that came in was, what majors are more accepting of transfers? We have 8 majors. I can't remember how many undergraduate majors off the top of my head right now. It's not about which one will let you in more, it's about being prepared. So regardless if you apply for a selective major, right, you're still going to need the bios and the chems and the calcs, regardless if you apply for animal science or if you apply for biology or you apply for human development or whatever it might be. So maybe rephrasing that question a little bit to focusing on what is my major and then what are my options if I don't get in under that major. Can one change their major after acceptance? So for the first quarter that you're here, the answer is no. You cannot switch your major or add a major, add a minor, any of that in your first quarter here at UC Davis. You would really need to establish a GPA here and then submit petitions around the winter or spring quarter. And that will be with your major advisor of your primary major that you're in. Can we apply with 2 majors? No, you would only apply for one. And I cannot stress this enough with this last minute that we have left. Making sure that your tag major is the same that you're applying under your UC Davis application major. So they have to match, okay? How to increase my chances with overall GPA, but the last 2 semesters is good. Okay, so I'm assuming, okay, so transfer admissions is pretty black and white. Do you have the grades? Do you have the GPA? And then what is your major? And I think building on that, and sometimes the answer is maybe this cycle is not the best cycle to apply. Let's stay a little bit longer at the community college, build our GPA, or retake classes, do an academic renewal, grade petitions, whatever we need to do to make sure that we raise our GPA not at the minimum, but definitely above the minimum, specifically if your majors in the STEM related field. Great questions though. Is there any course or petition we can do to argue for equivalency of a course that aren't articulated? So no, the petition itself, well, if it's a California community college, the answer is on assist.org. If the course is from out of state, then it's up to the UC to really determine the equivalency of that course. And then if and when you are a student at our institution, then you'll work with the Office of the Registrar and your major advisor to see if a petition would be appropriate for that particular course, okay? So with that being said, I do want to invite you all for our upcoming webinars. The big one that's coming is our Discover Your UC in the month of July. So I'm going to be a chat support and we're all going to be there. So if you could please join us mid-July for these webinars to learn a little bit more. And then if you have any questions or would like some more information regarding undergraduate admissions here at UC Davis, feel free to reach out. And if you're interested in learning more about UC Davis itself, you're more than welcome to visit us. Over the summer is a good time. You could always also do a virtual tour. And again, you could visit the TOP YouTube channel. in a few days, and we'll be adding this particular webinar on that page. So huge thank you to my co-host Nancy, to Amy and Lydia for assisting in the chat, for adding all those links. Sorry that we couldn't get to all the questions, but we are at time. We'll see you at the next webinar. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.